There is a lot of chaos and confusion in the world, especially in the world that we live in now. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, and people tend to bury their heads in the sand. So, what I want to do is help people to be able to face the world without fear and anxiety. And realistically, what I'm trying to do is hold myself up as an example. And I'm human like anybody else. So, do I fall out of alignment from time to time? Of course I do. But what I'm really trying to do is say that, it is possible, at least the majority of the time, to live a life that's free from anxiety and fear and chaos and confusion, and to recognize who you really are, because I think that's very freeing ultimately. When you know who you are, you know who everybody else is. And with that information comes a lot of freedom, because you're able to step outside of the ego. And instead of having the ego dictate who you are, you have an inherent knowing of who you are. And I think that if there's anything that I can do, it's to help reduce the chaos and fear and confusion in the world. Because once you do that, once you recognize that what we're really facing is a battle between source and ego, and you're able to step aside from the ego, it allows you to move further into alignment with source, which ultimately allows you to make more love-inspired actions, and therefore through your own actions create a more loving world. So to me, it's really about knowing who you are, and once you know who you are, gathering the freedom to then decide who you want to be and how you want to face the world. And in my case, it's a way to look at the world without fear and anxiety. And again, I'm human. I fall out of it too. There's times when I don't feel very enlightened, and there's times when I do. But to me, it's despite being a moment by moment thing, you can always examine your life and see how you want to live it, and how you want to live it in relationship to everything else. Ultimately, that's what we're here trying to do, is we're trying to gather our experiences so that we can define who we want to be. And that's why relationships are exceedingly important, because they are the fundamental foundation of how we deal with the world. So I know it's profoundly affected my relationship with my family. It's profoundly affected my relationship with the people that I work with. It's profoundly affected the way that I view the world. And I'm fundamentally a different person than I was 10 years ago. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be giving talks on spirituality and connection to source and all that, and leading a very public life in that regard, I probably wouldn't have believed you, because it's not really who I was back then. It's still something that I'm not super comfortable with now. I'm not really a very public person. I'm a very private person naturally. But when I look at the world and I talk to the people in the world, and they tell me their issues, what I see them dealing with is ego and attachment. And as somebody who doesn't necessarily deal with that on a regular basis anymore, I just look at it and I say, well, that's ego, and that's attachment, and that's ego, and that's attachment. And so, to me, the answers are simple. But I think a lot of people are trapped, and they don't understand how to get out. And they're trying to figure out their way. And if I can help in that regard, if I can bring them to the clarity that I have, then I think that's a good thing.